There's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here to...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to PhD Geek. I am one of your hosts, Huzzah.
This is Pagan.
And I'm hoping everyone is having a wonderful day. Maybe. It's a nice, kind of not sunny, windy day down here in Georgia.
And the only reason it's nice is because it's not sunny.
Exactly. If you live in Georgia, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, anyway, moving on. Today, this is kind of a bonus episode because we love you all so much. By bonus, what I mean is we're going to be releasing this episode with another one this week. This is actually done really fresh, as in opposed to our other episodes that we do usually a week beforehand or 2 weeks beforehand, and then we give you guys the lowdown of that episode when we feel like releasing it. This particular episode is jump-started because of a lot of the violence that's been happening in our country as of late. Not just the Alton shooting and things like that, but also this is coupling in with Pulse and all of our other shootings that typically occur throughout America as a whole. And of course, in our PhD typical way, we're going to tie this in with something geeky and why that may be relevant to you. But like I said, full disclosure, we are pumping this video up a little bit earlier than we had planned, mainly due to the fact that there's just so much going on in America today in regards to this kind of upheaval and violence. Pagan, if I'm correct, how many typical shootings occur a week?
It depends on how you define it,
Mm-hmm.
but as it's defined, a mass shooting happens more than once a day in the U.S.
So you can kind of see the necessity here for us to say something about this, because of the fact largely is that at some point in time, blame will not only be placed on either authority figures or race, but they're going to come after games as well, and for sometimes a good reason,
As they have numerous times in the past.
Yeah, so, games are not without fault here at all, and as you have seen in our war episodes, and if you haven't, go check those out, games definitely utilize violence in multiple different ways, and some of that may be used to promote a particular form of violence or stuff like that. So that is why we're kind of speaking out. Now, this episode, we had kind of toed around with titles as it goes, and we're not sure which one we may use in the end run, but kind of the pre-project term for this is the shooting of brown people, which is a huge thing in video games. If you have played any kind of video game that depicts any kind of violence, particularly with firearms, you're typically going to see that your standard enemy is going to be of a different melanin shade than what you would consider white. And this is what kind of leads itself into some of the violence that we see today. Now, how does that tie in with some of the shootings and video games in general? Just taking the past couple of shootings that have occurred throughout this month and last month, we're looking at shootings that have targeted African American men and also Latino and Hispanic individuals that may be connected with or part of the LGBTQ community. And that, of course, is insinuating with Pulse. If anyone knows about it, a large number of people that were affected by this were of Latino or Hispanic heritage, and that is important to acknowledge. Not to try to dissuade the fact that it targeted people that are part of the LGBT community, but understanding that when you're looking at violence in video games and you're looking at violence in the real world, there are some kinds of correlations and connections. Bacon, seem like you want to say anything?
Okay. Not at the moment.
Okay, sorry.
This is the part where I would make sardonic comments, but this subject doesn't warrant them.
Yes, so this episode will be a bit heavy. We do kind of, sort of, maybe apologize. Not really.
Not really. Have we made a light episode since Jet Force?
We've recorded light episodes. There's happy episodes on this podcast.
Like unicorns exist.
Yay! Unicorns. Not as many that exist in My Little Pony. Because they're every fucking where. But, so this episode, just, full warning and disclosure, like, if you are triggered by anything we're going to discuss and talk about, please listen to our other episodes. We want to send out a message here, but...
if we're doing a trigger warning, we should probably warn what's coming up, like discussions of racism, violence, gun violence, and probably most of what we're going to be talking about.
And so we're going, full disclosure, trigger warning there. If you really can't handle all of that, please don't listen to this episode. We're fine with that. We have other episodes like those. This one just avoid.
Or at least now you know what you're getting in for.
Yeah. So, moving ahead with that, there are a few games we're going to target in particular. However, I'm going to list off just a few games that really captured my mind when it came to some of these.
Before that, I haven't actually even looked at this sheet yet. But what were you wanting to discuss this episode then?
Okay, so when it comes to this episode, what I'm really looking to connect here is the importance of learning what kind of games you're playing in regards to this particular situation. So when you're investing into a video game, what are you getting? What is it teaching you indirectly? Or what is it teaching you directly? Also drawing attention that video games can, while they are great forces for good, can be used for forces of evil. And I will explain you that in a moment when you look at some of these games. But what I'm trying to kind of pinpoint here is that when you're taking your media in, look at what you're taking in and look at what you're giving to other people. The whole point of not only this podcast, but I feel video games in general, is to send out some kind of message through media. And whether that message is direct or not, is important that you're taking that into consideration.
That's a great point that ought to be mentioned a lot, but engage your media actively and critically.
Yeah, so, I'm going to throw out my soapbox moment. You people who enjoy new Harley Quinn, we're going to have an episode on that one and why you shouldn't probably like her. But that's neither here nor there. So we're going to kind of keep the focus on race in games, particularly race with violence. I know we have some episodes that will be coming up that deal with race, and you may hear some of this stuff repeated. But this is fully focused on kind of the tragic events and how video games may play parts in this, or how you can learn from your games to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
I would like to say something here that I think that you've kind of been discussing on or touching on. Normally in this podcast we kind of have a deductive thing where we bring up a lot of examples and then tie them all together into a cohesive point or theme. But I guess this time we're going to do it the opposite. I'm not going to bury the lead here. I feel it's important to note that neither Hazak nor I are advocating that games significantly influence violence. The games do not cause violence themselves. Yeah. And also games where depicting shooting people of other races also doesn't cause that same behavior. I would argue that it is not the games that is causing the behavior, but rather that the behavior and the games that mimic that behavior are branches from the same tree and root. Right. That being racism.
Yeah.
Just deeply ingrained racism.
And racism to the degree where some of you may be listening to this episode and going, what the fuck? No, that's not it. Not at all. I play this game all the time. My black friends play this game all the time. And if that sentence runs through your head, it may be racism. Now, don't get me wrong. It's so deeply ingrained in people that because you have a racist thought may not make you racist. But you need to start to pin those out sooner rather than later.
It's also there's a significant difference in scale. We are by no means equivocating games depicting violence or specifically violence against racial minorities and actual violence or violence against minorities. No. I'm just saying that they are likely stemming from the same root problem. Just very different scales. And one of the things I'll say is that the video games where you see this, as we argued in our war episode, is that it normalizes the behavior. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily lead to that behavior in individuals, but it can make the behavior seem less aberrant.
Yes, it desensitizes the behavior in many ways. Just kind of how if you're constantly seeing or hearing about these atrocities, you may become a bit desensitized to it. That's not a good thing, to be desensitized to such atrocities. But it is a reality that is being faced today, and video games do play a part in it in some way.
I mean, to a certain extent, Americans are especially facing a desensitization of mass shootings. Hazak and I have even sadly commented upon our experiences with that. When faced with news, we care, and it's deeply upsetting, but
it's so regular.
It does not produce a significant emotional response.
Not unless it's truly talked about at length, in which it never truly is. I know for me personally, as of late, I've been more responsive to the shootings of this week, mainly because I have been questioned and asked about it. And so it's more upsetting when I have to finally let those, I guess, desensitized feelings become sensitive again. And I think it's important to understand that me and Pagan are actually very much connected to many of these shootings that have occurred over the past 2 months for two different reasons, because of of how we are as people, essentially, either our demographics, essentially. And so, not even going to tell you which one is which, but we are both part in some way of the communities that have been affected. And you guys can figure out which one is which.
But sprinkling a mystery into this, that's maybe a little crass.
A little bit of fun never hurt anyone. And so, you got to keep it a little light. So moving into these. Sorry.
Sorry for interrupting you. Just one more point before I think we could. I feel good about moving on. We're also not necessarily saying that the people developing these games are all racist.
Some of them are, though.
Some of them,
but not all.
By looking at this sheet, I can definitely say are without a doubt racist. And one of them is such a blinding level of who the fuck let this get published that I might consider calling them racist. However, a lot of these are just kind of like reflective of American culture and the racism that exists in that culture. We have a definite problem in our society, and even when you aren't really actively racist, you can sometimes, by creating media that reflects the culture, show the racism inherent in it.
Yeah.
And if you basically what I'm saying is it might not lay exactly on the blood might not be on the developer's hands except in certain circumstances, but it's partially on their hands and partially the culture that we live in.
Yeah. And I guess another thing, we keep giving a lot of disclaimers here. I guess it's really important to do that. This is a very heavy episode.
It's a heavy episode, and we also don't want to we don't want to say that we're just,
we're just saying stuff to be saying things.
Yeah. So I feel it's important that our message is, if not exactly completely clear, well, at least we've said what we aren't saying.
Yeah. And also, I wanted to make it known that this episode is definitely dealing on representations of brown people in video games. That is not to say that there are not cultures and races that are misrepresented in video games that we may not be disclosing, particularly when I consider Asian cultures in video games and the racism that is placed upon those cultures and those people. We will definitely be having an episode about that. The big thing is, however, in most of these games, and most games in general, the violence is not depicted when it comes to the racism against them, but a whole different type of racism is displayed in those video games.
And hey, there's also, do you call it racism when it's against like Germans and Russians, or like what would that be?
It is considered it's cultural.
Like, nationalism.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
So
like,
we don't. We should look up the word for that. We will look up the appropriate form.
But like, think of all the Nazis you shoot.
Yes, exactly.
Like, that's kind of desensitizing violence against Germans.
Yeah. It's also kind of establishing that Germans are like Nazis by proxy somehow.
Yeah.
And so we're definitely gonna have episodes that pertain to that, because those are definitely issues that have a great importance as well. We're just kind of doing this because of the recent situations and the prevalence of these situations, particularly in our country
and even our community. I mean, like, we've made it known that we're from Atlanta,
and just yesterday,
no, I think it was Wednesday, is one of the things that happened in Atlanta.
Oh yeah. Well, the atrocity. However, we had a march and a rally yesterday because of it. Very peaceful, by the way. Only a few people got arrested and no one was harmed.
Actually, I think I heard on NPR that no one got arrested.
Oh, look at that. And everyone talks about this.
Atlanta has always kind of been the weird exception.
Yeah, that's true. So props out,
but even
by the way.
we have our problems.
Yeah, props out to people who went out there and marched and gave their all to something. I know plenty of my personal friends were out there. Nice job, guys.
I was working that night.
Do not worry. I was not out for obvious reasons that Pagan would know. I'm not being out nearby weaponry.
Being cowardice.
Little bit. I was.
Trust me, when it comes to your actual, like, I could be shot, cowardice is a very good feeling.
Well, not only that, but I too was at work and dealing with school. Did not feel safe. Partner did not feel safe for me being out. And thus, there are two minds that did not feel safe and in agreement for that. You do what you can, but that does not mean that I do not. I want to celebrate the people who did go out, because that's awesome.
And we're communicating.
This is this is our way.
This is our part.
This is our way. Definitely no forms of levels or comparisons here. I don't do that shit. Fuck that noise.
We have not talked about a single game. We continue.
We are what, 18 minutes? Whatever, fuck it. You guys listen to us talk for hours about Jet Force. We're giving a disclaimer here. So let's get to...
I'm not apologizing for that episode. Let's get to
the games, because that's what we're here for.
Video games.
So video games are great, and we like shooting things and making them not move. But there are some situations where that's a bad no.
Do you ever miss the days of Doom when you were shooting literal demons from hell? Like that?
Actually, yes.
Or Unreal, when it was like
Unreal
aliens.
Tournament. That one bazooka.
Oh, man.
Nuclear charge.
Or even Halo, with its also kind of weird problems, and the fact that you can kind of vaguely make allusions of the Covenant to real life humans.
Yeah, yeah.
But even then, they're still, like...
They ain't human. And it's, we're still taking life, but at least it's not real ones. Our depictions of real ones.
But that's not what we're here to talk about
today.
So
moving on past that. So, we sidetracked so hard. So I'm going to get the real, just fucked up, controversial games out the way. I'm not going to talk most about them. Please don't search them and shit like that.
Is that even a controversy? There should be no dissenting opinions here.
I'm going to say it anyway, because someone may disagree. Point is, I'm going to tell you some games that just fucked up when they were made. I'm not going to tell you why, because obviously you know why. But just going to tell you these because these games fucking exist, and you kind of need to know that people actually publish shit like this and somehow make monetary value.
Did that thing get published?
Yes. So the game, one is known as Ethnic Cleansing. It was made on January 21st, 2002. I was 13.
Holy shit.
When this game was created, it was made by the National Alliance, the white supremacy area, National Alliance. And the game basically has a player play as a neo-Nazi and or a Klan member who is out doing literally ethnic cleansing by eradicating African Americans, Latinos, and Jewish enemy archetypes, and these are all in a stereotyped fashion. So that just alone is just a depiction of how you can take violence, put it in a video game, send it out as a message that people have known about for years, that these people have sent out, and influence younger people, because once again, it's a video game. It's going to be targeted towards a younger audience.
Yeah, I don't think there's nothing really of value to say about that one. It's just hate speech.
It's just hate speech. Just letting you know that there's a hate speech game out there. Moving past the...
Unfortunately, there are more like it on the list.
Yes. The next one is Muslim Massacre, which was made in 2008. I don't need to say much about this game because it's in the fucking title. Quite literally, you are going around and trying to eradicate every Muslim on screen. Clearly, just a hateful game derived from many fears and hatred of Muslim people because of both war and its misinterpretations of what a Muslim is, and just bigotry. Like these two games that I listed, I am letting you know that there are individuals out there who have taken video games and have just destroyed them.
And likely we're not even listing all the, like those two I would describe as literal hate speech. There's just nothing of
redeeming quality point to them.
And we aren't going to list all of them. We didn't even bother looking them all up because
we're not going to give them that much fucking traffic.
Yeah,
like it's just not going to happen because some of you are definitely going to go and look these things up. I'm just not fucking doing it. And some of you will claim it's for curiosity and shit like that. There are certain things you can be curious about and not fucking touch it. Pandora's box is one of them. So just going to put that out there. So those were the games that just clearly are fucking fucked up and fuck shit and goddamn it.
And now we get to talk about the game that is on the half measure.
Which one is that one? Okay. So, Call of Juarez, the cartel, was made on July 19th, 2011.
Published.
Published on that date. Now, this game, from all of my understandings, you play three brothers. In it, you are...
I thought that was Call of Juarez. I thought the cartel was later on. You were playing as, a few different characters. One was an FBI chick. And... Okay,
yeah. I get what you mean. Yes. There's two.
Yeah, you're thinking of Call of Juarez.
Okay, yeah.
So which was not as bad It was just another bland shooter.
And the first one you're talking about, Cabo Juarez, is the one with the chick, the lady in the...
No, that's the cartel.
Okay.
The FBI chick is the cartel. Call of Juarez is the first one, and it was just like in the Wild West days.
Okay. Okay, yeah. You're right. I'm thinking of Gun, which is a different one. Yes, you're right. So anyway, moving on.
Although wasn't Gun also set in the Wild West days?
Yes. Anyway, you're right. So moving on with that line of thought, this video game in particular deals with the Mexican drug war that's happening currently in Mexico and has its influences on America and the country in and of itself. Now,
it's one of those things that I find very difficult to research because, like, I just have to step away from my computer for a bit.
Yeah, it's fucked up. So, it's bad. And so, kind of moving through this, just so you get an understanding of how this game depicts things negatively, there is a particular level that we're going to get to and discuss about. That is the main part of it. But some of the things that they also do, they blatantly get things wrong to the degree where they talk about trafficking, human trafficking, about Mexican women.
Stealing or crossing the border into the Americas, stealing American red.
Wait. I'm saying what actually happens.
Oh.
And then what they depict in the game.
Okay.
So the kidnapping and stealing of Mexican women and using them for all sorts of forms of trafficking, sex, and drugs.
Most of which head to the U.S.
Most of which are head to the U.S. That is an actual reality that people face in Mexico.
Let me be explicit. There are Americans who pay to have sex with prostitutes that were kidnapped from Mexico.
This happens in your country.
If you're American.
It happens in your country if you're Mexican too, but you're the ones that have to worry about being kidnapped, which is sad. Pagan put his head down. It's a heavy episode. Did we tell you that already? So, moving past that point, in the video game, Pagan, if you want to discuss how the game depicts this.
Do I have to?
Yes, you do. You're part of this.
Fuck. The game depicts Mexicans crossing the border into the United States, stealing American white women, and then selling them as sex slaves in Mexico, which is just so many different types of inefficient, unprofitable, dangerous, and just God damn it.
So he put his head down. So in order to kind of articulate this to a different point, this is a gross misrepresentation of what's happening in the war, and this is something that's important when it comes to video games and this depiction. Think about it this way. The reality is someone that is labeled as brown or as a colored individual, a minority, that is being taken and harmed by their body and lifestyle and everything in reality. The game is now taking that very same concept, reworking it around so that Americans are the ones that are being victimized by individuals in a country that is already getting stereotyped as a negative entity.
Which, damn, if that doesn't sound like Twitter racists in a nutshell.
That's pretty much what trolling is, okay? So when I hear things like,
you get
All Lives Matter or Straight Pride Day,
oh god,
you know, like things like that. Like when
that one actually does not upset me quite as much as All Lives Matter, because at least in the Constitution they didn't have a thing that said all orientations are equal, and then, well, not the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. By the way, here's an explanation as to why All Lives Matter is stupid. In the Declaration, they write, all men are created equal. And then, the guy who fucking wrote that declaration owned black slaves. You can see where there's a bit of a disconnect. No, when you say all lives matter, people don't hear that. They hear white lives matter, because that's what, for about the, from when it was written to civil rights, kind of, for a little bit there during Reconstruction, but mostly until civil rights, what all really meant was white. So you have to say Black Lives Matter, because otherwise it's not going to get said.
And so I acknowledge that some of you may be trolls, and you're going to do that. That's fine, because you exist and I can't do anything about that. That being said, you're still wrong. It's not an argument. That's it. And so moving past that, that's exactly, yeah, it's kind of like saying something like that. That depiction of what's happening to Mexican women and children that's the reality. You taking a video game, utilizing that to skew that reality towards something that's more favorable towards your country, not only does this disservice to the country that you're trying to depict, but also your country as a whole. And that's not even the worst part of the game. The worst part of the...
you're going to talk about the achievement, I guess?
Yeah.
I'd actually say that the lie is worse.
The
achievement is, like, stupid, and what the fuck were you thinking?
But it's not communicating this idea of a realization about what's happening in the war. You are correct there. I do change my statement there. That is the worst part.
I mean, you're choosing between 2 and 20 piles of shit.
Yeah, you're still gonna put it in your face. And so the next part here is the achievement. There is a level in this video game, and then remind me, this is a shooter.
Did we talk about this in the race episode that hasn't come out yet?
Yeah. So, like I said, some of this may be repeated, but this is a big part. In this video game, you have
most of the levels you're only shooting waves of Mexicans or black people, because you're also in Southern California, so that follows. I think the level is called Gangland. The achievement, and Gangland is the only level where there are only black people, or only black enemies. And the achievement is called Bad Guy. You have to shoot 40 or kill 40 enemies, and so the achievement is for killing 40 black people.
Now,
and that's just like kind of, what the fuck were you doing with the mechanics there, people?
Now, this is very important because, like you'll hear in our race episode too, but this is particularly important to this episode as a whole, is because we're looking at black men being shot, and this game does it in a depicts it in a way.
Not only that, but it's also giving this pervasive idea of the black man as a terrifying thug, of a only violent thing, where the only interaction a black man is going to have with you is shoot you. The only interaction a Mexican man is going to have with you is steal your women's.
Yes. And so
that's what the game is kind of implicitly saying with its mechanics, or explicitly saying with its God-forsaken lie.
And so this is important because of the fact that when it comes to video games, you're playing these games. You're not just sitting there learning something like you would in a classroom. It's not just obvious to you. These games, and all video games that you play that have something in this nature, are depicting a form of violence to you. I'm sorry, I say all games. I don't mean all games.
No, I'm actually just... weren't we going to do a happy episode? You did this to me.
It's important.
It is important.
So, we'll do a happy episode after this. Kind of happy. None of our episodes are full happy. We never go full happy. And so the whole thing here is that in this video game in particular, you're in a way learning what a villain is. You are learning about... Some people learn history and situations through video games. This game is teaching you about a part of history and a part of a situation incorrectly. And this may be some individuals' only form of learning about this situation, because they may not want to go out on themselves and do independent research.
And admittedly, the drug war doesn't get touched on a lot in the U.S., so it's entirely feasible for this to be someone's only media on it.
Exactly. And when you're talking about representing something only in one form of media or one form of representation, you really got to make sure you get that shit down. You can't just throw that shit out there.
For instance, Narcos did a pretty fucking good job of talking about the much earlier drug war that happened in Colombia.
And so, when you're trying to depict these forms in your media, what was really important is that understanding this influences other people's lives. Think about it in these shootings that have been occurring. Black men are shot either with or without weapons, and never using, if they do have weapons, these weapons are never being utilized in a violent manner, but they are exercising what everyone likes to talk about nowadays is their Second Amendment right. And they are being executed and taken down for exercising this right in a peaceful manner. That is the situation in reality that black men tend to have to face in America. And this is not something that is based off of your skin tone. Dark or light is a situation that all black men face. Typically because when it comes to cops, there's not really confusion about whether or not you are light or dark skinned. They just know you're black. And in all these video games, they definitely make sure they try to give in a few shades so that you can understand that while we are all violent, there's a diversity in how the violent looks. And so that's an important part. This is not necessarily, again, we're not saying that these games are teaching people or cops or anybody to shoot anybody that is African American. But what we are saying is that when you're depicting someone that is of a darker skin tone as a villain, then when you translate that outside in the real world, people may start to skew that into that area. And that is that one game. A few other games that we're going to touch on real quick here.
So the first two were hate speech. The Call of Juarez is like, what the fuck were you thinking? The rest, at least, I can say, are only just kind of troubling.
Yeah, the rest of these are a product of...
I barely know that one at all, so...
Oh, so the rest of these games are basically based off of games that were decent, or some of these games are big. And they reflect certain parts of the issues with racism in our culture.
Yeah, like I said earlier, some of these are unfortunate reflections of unfortunate realities.
Mm-hmm. And so you guys are going to hear us talk about Resident Evil 5 a good bit in our race episode. But just touching on a good bit of this game, it takes place in Africa, and your enemies are going to be Africans because the populace there has been dominated by a virus that has influenced them to become zombies of some sort. The issues with this game...
Damn.
Oh, you didn't get the whole AIDS thing?
No. I've actually said the whole AIDS thing to you before, and I've said it in the race episode that they use like AIDS crisis imagery. But when you lay it out in that specific order with that specific word choice, there's no way to look at it as anything else.
Yeah. So there's a reason why I fucking hate Resident Evil 5. And here's the scariest thing about this, Pagan, is that Resident Evil 5 is the second most sold game by Capcom.
Wait, for real?
Yes, I looked this up a couple of days ago.
What's the most sold?
Resident Evil 6.
What? Devil May Cry didn't do better than that?
It's like number 5 or something.
Oh, that's a fucking travesty.
Yeah, I know. Street Fighter 2 is number 3.
Well, okay, but it kind of deserves those. Street Fighter 2 is a really good game.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. It should be number 1 or something like that. At least, Resident Evil 6 and 5 shouldn't be up there.
Yeah, no.
So,
this is also... Resident Evil 4 also deserves to be on this list because
it does.
What was the entire class of enemies in Resident Evil 4?
Spaniards.
Spanish peasants. Greasy Spanish peasants.
And he's using that as an ironic way of depicting it. Yes, those are your
enemies. The game kind of depicts it that way. No,
I know the game does. I'm just clarifying that. Pagan does not think that Spanish peasants are like that. But yeah, so...
Well, we don't call them peasants anymore. Spain isn't a monarchy, so there are no peasants.
Oh yeah, I know.
There's just poor people.
Yeah, because, change the wording, and it just changes how they live. So yeah, so Resident Evil 4 definitely is like an honorable mention.
Sorry, just under another world for you, you could call them the what? No, shit, I messed it up.
He had something there.
Anyway, workers of the world unite.
So, Resident Evil 4 definitely does deserve an honorable mention because of that. I give Resident Evil 4 a little bit of a slight plug away.
It's a mild,
it's campy, and it's meant to be.
Well, here's the simple truth of it. We're giving it a pass because you're shooting white people, even though they aren't all specifically Spaniards.
They are a white man shooting white people.
They are Europeans, and there
are no black people in that game. No, there's one.
There was one?
The lady that you talked to on the communicator.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
But yeah, you're an American going in and shooting up a fuck ton of Spaniards, which, boy, if that wouldn't create an international incident.
Yeah. So that definitely deserves an honorable mention. But when it comes to Resident Evil 5, as we said, the AIDS depiction and then also the violence against these people who are infected is also done in a very unculturally sensitive way.
We'll leave that bit
yeah.
of Resident Evil 5 for the race episode.
Yeah, because that's in there. So we won't go too deep into Resident Evil 5. It's just another game that depicts that. A small other thing about Resident Evil 5 is that you play you also have a character named Shiva, who's in your party. She is native to the area, and
I've never actually played Resident Evil 5. Did they mention the country, or did they just leave it as middle of Africa?
I don't remember. I think it's middle of Africa. It may have an actual place, but I don't remember.
I'm just wondering.
Now, in particular, when it came to this game, it definitely has two dimensions about it when it comes to coloration and characters. Shiva is what is considered light skin, and in the African American community, for those of you who are not part of it, light skin are usually those African Americans that are literally lighter than the other African Americans.
Shock and awe, there's difference in skin tones.
Yes. Typically, this should not pose an issue. However, because of how America has run the gambit amongst skin tones,
there's a number of problems there where basically, since light people are literally closer to white, they are seen as prettier, more acceptable,
educated,
less barbaric,
angry
than
darker skinned individuals of the exact same race. And so this is important because she is what's considered light skinned. And that is an important thing because she's the one that's on your side. She's the teammate. A form of good in this sea of evil. And so
also worth noting that she was not announced until people saw and reacted significantly negatively to the AIDS imagery and like the demo of the first level that was released where you were only shooting black people.
And so if a character is announced after someone gets enraged, you may go, hey, pagan, Hazak, you ignorant assholes, maybe that character was already in production. But have you ever played the game and seen her controls? No character that was already thought about controls that poorly. So what we're saying is that sometimes companies don't want you to hate them, and so they'll throw in your tokens to make you feel good.
Now, we should definitely note that Resident Evil is made by Capcom, Japanese company. They have...
True.
Well, neither of us are Japanese. And
neither of us are Japanese, and we cannot speak for the country as a whole, but throughout looking at Capcom's resume...
We can talk about Capcom.
Yes.
They're a little bit what the fuck.
Basically, looking at it, it clearly shows that Capcom does not try to do as much research as it could in cultural areas that are outside of its parameters.
But what I was saying is that a lot of this is coming from a specifically American culture thing.
Yes.
And Capcom exists outside that. So
yes. It exists outside of it to a degree. I'd argue that Capcom has such a large influence on American culture as far as video games are concerned.
I was saying that Capcom exists within Japanese culture.
Yes.
But then you also have to acknowledge the fact that Japanese culture was significantly influenced by American culture, both everything after 45 to current day.
And just looking at our media, games and animation are literally back and forth when it comes to Japan and America.
Oh, yeah.
So, it is very... I'd argue that there's no longer an excuse. It's the same
Not
excuse
only that,
I give
but also
to, like,
our cars.
Yeah. So, very important. Do your research, no matter what country you come from. So, moving past...
Oh, yeah, I wasn't trying to excuse Capcom.
Oh, yeah, no.
I was
just giving the disclosure that we ain't Japanese.
Context.
Yeah.
I was giving the context that Capcom exists in another culture.
Yeah, yeah. So, moving past that, there are other games to mention. One, just in passing, is Gun, which was created in 2005. It has a negative depiction of Native Americans and their stereotypes in video games.
Oh, fuck.
Yes. So, I don't have to go too deep into that because, well, our culture shows enough of Native Americans being misrepresented in video games.
That should probably deserve its whole episode some other time.
Yeah, like we'll tackle that one.
We're
gonna get dark on that one. No,
like it's actually it's hard to think of a group that got it worse than the Africans when it came to treatment in America.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only because you always forget about the natives. Because as bad as you've got your picks, slavery or extermination.
It ain't a stacking contest.
That's a loser's pick.
There is no stacking contest here. That's like, oh, what was worse? Nazi Germany, or slavery, or the eradication of Native Americans, or the destruction of Aboriginals that were found in Australia. And
you're forgetting Stalin's Purge.
China's many forms of execution on its not on its own people but its surrounding countries.
Well, we just lost a few viewers. The Great Firewall has gone up.
Well, no, we probably didn't lose them all.
Yeah,
there's some social justice people in China.
We probably didn't have them to begin with.
I believe in you guys.
If you're a Chinese listener, please send us an email. We'd be stoked to hear from you.
Yeah, that would be nice.
And anyone else, honestly.
Yeah.
We'd be stoked to hear from you.
Yeah,
no matter where you're from.
Yeah.
But if you're from somewhere outside the U.S.,
that'd be so cool.
It actually would kind of...
The translation alone would be cool.
Yeah, we're going to keep talking in English. I'm sorry about that. No localization. We're a two-person team.
We are not going to butcher someone's language. So then moving on to a game that kind of I can use as the closer here is a game that is actually, in my opinion, a pretty good game series. Very good, very creative, very nice, but it depicts violence in such a way that it desensitizes all sorts of things. And that is the infamous, the great, the all-powerful Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is a cool game series. But it is a game series that has a lot of fucking problems.
It is, yeah.
We're not going to get into the okay for doing crime, the killing of people who are
random
considered
civilians.
people who are considered sex workers.
That too.
The exuberance of money you achieve from killing said workers. The mission base where you intertwine in both kidnapping and money laundering and apprehension of illegal substances and things like that. Won't get into any of that.
Are we going to get into the killing of random civilians and mowing pedestrians down?
Now, we will get into that because that is connected to what we're talking about. This game literally can allow you to do drive-bys whenever you want to and abolish the consequences in various ways. You are shown that exercising your Second Amendment right can be both fun and destructive in these video games.
Okay. I do.
I am not connecting. Let me disclaim here. I am not saying that exercising your Second Amendment right is doing this. But what I am saying is that this game does take part in a form of fictional America. Yeah. This character is utilizing that very right and is using that to exploit certain things. Not to say that this is the message or that people who do this are doing that. But what I am saying, however, is that this game is showing that form of use of weaponry as a cool and fun activity. That is true. And the game in and of itself, again, attacks this idea of desensitizing violence towards individuals because of the fact is that the people that you kill are easily replaced all the time. And over time, you just kind of shoot people or roll them over and just you continue on with your game. I think for me, this kind of wraps up a large idea of what we're speaking about. And
oh wait, did you want to say anything specific on Grand Theft Auto and as the title of the episode is, shooting around people?
Yes. So in Grand Theft Auto,
or perhaps you might want to tie it with the relation between gun users and law enforcement.
Yes. So in the game, that's a good idea because that also ties into the situations nowadays. In the game, you typically are playing some kind of character that has issues with law enforcement in general. And in the game, you take up against rival gangs and rival situations on many occurrences. And most of these games, these rivals are going to be brown, black, Latino, Hispanic. Pick your poison, you're probably going to shoot them. And in that context, this again is adding on to that ideal set that these individuals are villains, that they are easily mowed down, they are not to be thought of as true individuals but as game enemies. Also, on that note, turning on to the flip side, it also encourages you almost to take violence against authority figures, particularly cops, and to view them as nothing but a form of target practice at many times as well, or as some kind of negative outset for your character.
I mean, especially in San Andreas, within like the
the villains are.
The first cutscene is establishing that you're an ex-con and your first antagonist is a cop. Yeah.
So that is a big importance here because tying this all back to the situations that have happened as of late and recently, there's a lot of ideal set when it comes to not just Black Lives Matter, but then there's also the concept of thinking about cops and are they bad? Are they good? On my own personal note,
Are we going to discuss our personal opinions of law enforcement?
I am not going to fully discuss my personal opinions of law enforcement, but I'm going to say a truth that is to be understood.
Okay.
There are bad cops. There are good cops. There are bad people who happen to be African American. There are good people who happen to be African American. That is an important idea to understand. The tragedies that have occurred on both sides, because sadly they have occurred on both sides now, do not skew these things to label them as a whole. As to saying that African American men are all evil, and many of these video games have depicted that, it would be just as completely ignorant to then state all cops are then, of course, evil as well.
Here's a very quick way to demonstrate the false dichotomy of the cops versus black people thing that apparently seems to exist that I find very stupid. Are there black cops?
Yes. Now that being
rest
said,
my case.
Not fully. Your case cannot rest here yet.
Well,
because I do. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yes, that's true. And that
I guess I've heard that people have been saying that you can either be if you're pro Black Lives Matter,
you can't anti-cop. Yeah.
Like that is a stupid argument.
Or that if you're a cop, you can't be for Black Lives Matter. That's just dumb. Now, don't get me wrong. This is There are many contextual clues that we could talk for multiple hours about where it comes to blacks and their worries and concerns when it comes to authority figures, and particularly cops and their ideals and sets and training that particularly go with people of African American or Latino or Hispanic descent when it comes to crime and violence. We're not going to get into that cesspool because that shit is that takes a lot of things to talk about. That's history lessons that you should go out there forth and look upon. That's not the point of the podcast.
It's also not Geek.
It's also not Geek. But it is important when we're looking
at that. Isn't to say that neither of us care about it. We do care.
As a matter of fact, we do far long amounts of understanding, research, and contributions to that idea.
It's just not going to be the subject of this podcast.
Yes. And so, but I think it is important to come back when we're looking at these relations in forms of black men versus cops in this particular situation at this time. Conjecture, yeah, is that both sides are going to have what we consider negative aspects, at least when it comes to individuals. So you're going to have individuals that want to take extremes on both sides. That's not okay. But on that flip side, you're going to have individuals that want to do things that help benefit both sides. You're going to have someone that's a cop out there that's like, I want to do my fucking job. I want to uphold the law. And I want African American black men to feel safe, and black families and black individuals to feel safe around me because I am a cop and my duty is to make you feel safe. You know, we already know the obvious truth of that there are cops out there that are either poorly trained too. Understand this. Some cops that do stupid things and hurt someone, particularly of a race, could just be poorly trained.
Or have cheated to pass their exams. That there's also been public controversies where it'll come out that a significant population or a significant percentage of the police population have cheated to pass exams.
And so those things are to be understood. There are both sides. And complete honest truth, there are definitely African Americans and blacks that do contribute to some form of violence in America. That, however, does not mean that every black man, black family, black individual is a violent-oriented person and is quote-unquote naturally attuned to going towards crime and violence. If this is getting over your head, go watch Zootopia. It'll do it in a much more clever and cute way that can interpret things for you. But this is more of a raw truth. In our video games today, these things are attacked and preyed upon in different ways. Sometimes by happenstance, sometimes by wanting to actually do it, sometimes just because it's what's deeply ingrained in our communities as Americans, and then translated into our medium as video gamers. What this entire episode is about is not to get you riled up and angry, but I'm pretty sure it may have at some point in time. It is to have you think and to have you look deeper into the video games that you're playing. And then
it is also to acknowledge that there is a deep and serious problem.
Yes. And these things are two things that are very important, because when you're done playing that video game, when you go out into the world, what do you see? I'm asking this of you as gamers and
geeks.
And geeks. And what do you see?
Because we keep forgetting we've renamed the podcast.
And so it's really important to me because our medium is so beautiful and so amazing to me, as being geeks and part of the geek culture, that we have so much power for change. But we also have so much power for corruption and hurt. And we need to look deeper into these things because lives are being lost. And it doesn't mean that games are the cause of it, but you also have to understand that are games giving something to this? Are they leading some kind of message? Are they leading some kind of imprint that makes other things possible? And I think that's just really important when it comes to this particular episode of the podcast. We do we do somewhat apologize. I do, at least, for making this episode so heavy and dark and upsetting. We have a happy episode being connected with this, so kind of, not really.
Yeah, what the fuck are you talking about? There's there's
this week is going to be 2 really dark episodes.
Actually, I'm there might be a happy episode that we can find to put up this week, maybe, but
we'll talk it over because we have happy episodes.
And also, I'm going to force him to record a happy episode after this one.
No!
Just so I can feel better.
Sadness must reign!
What the... This is so weird, too, because normally I'm the depressing one and he's, like, annoyingly optimistic.
Yeah, we're flipping the script. Changing it up like the Beatles with our pieces. That's a lyrical line that I stole from Epic Rap Battles of History.
Okay, now that makes more sense.
And so, this again, we'll do a happy episode to tie in, and I guess we'll release that one with this one. So you may get another triple whammy. Congratulations, Pagan is rewarding you guys because of the sad episode. So,
consolation prize.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about some things like that. So, in closing, like, add, and subscribe.
Let's see. Let's go down the list here. Please visit phdgames.squarespace.com.
Just visit us at Stitcher.com, and you can search PhD Geek or PhD Geek Levels or Levels PhD Geek, whichever you have, and you can find our podcast there.
We are at PhD_games on Twitter.
And you can also find us on iTunes as well. If you have not already, you can subscribe to all of those. Also, when you're on our website, please do check out our area for contact information. And we just added a new comments page for each of our podcasts when they're up. So you can leave your comments, particularly probably on this episode. Let us know what you think, and let us know if you have any ideas. I do want to give a full disclosure that we are trying to be a positive podcast for growth here. So while our episodes may be dark, if you feel the need to troll, I'll see how much you troll. If you troll too much, I may just... Bzzz. We're not here for negative thoughts. We're here for growth. So if you have a critique or something to add on that may be helpful, well, listen. We should. We want to grow too.
A final happy note.
Yeah, so we'll be doing this off and on once in a while, and we'll be talking about this in every episode whenever it's available or it's changing. We're going to have a new prize event for you all, so we're hoping to send out some free shit, folks, that you may like. Randomized shit, but it's geek paraphernalia. You can't go wrong with that. So we'll have more details about that on our Twitter page and on our website possibly, and just check that out. Stay tuned for that, and thank you for your time, and thank you for listening. Sadness.
Thank you for playing.